Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz pianist Phillip Golub and drummer Layne Fabrizio. They spoke to us in early April 2020 about their latest 2020 CD, Tropos, Axioms 75 AB. And they also spoke about this new surreal jazz world that we live in. They opened up about their paths in jazz, the hopeful future ahead, and so much more. Dig it.
How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. So how's the community holding up in your end of the world?
Oh, it's up and down. A lot of people I know are really struggling financially and economically, and that's really hard to see. And for me, that's the more immediate shock, actually, rather than the public health stuff. It's more just the economic fallout. It's really dire. So, I'm personally kind of okay. I have a teaching gig, which is continuing and stuff, but it's scary out there.
Yeah, I think that's the bigger takeaway from all of this. There's a myriad of ways that we can look at this, but where are you at specifically in the world right now?
So I'm based in New York, but
okay.
I'm currently splitting time between New York and Boston area.
I got you.
That's because my partner's doing a PhD up here, and I've got some TA gigs at the Harvard Music Department and that kind of stuff. So I split my time normally, and I am hunkering down here in Somerville, Mass, away from with my partner here instead of being in New York right now. So that's where I'm currently.
Cool. Yeah, it's right now, here in Kansas City, we're just kind of waiting for this tsunami they keep talking about, and hopefully after that, the curve can get trimmed. And I think that's the thing, it's the waiting game. And, one of the things that I'm trying to do is really talk to musicians so that you can talk about new materials so people can get it, just kind of have some level of cathartic outreach to talk about music when the headlines are dominated by things that probably we're tired of seeing, and just to talk about this new world we're in right now. So thanks for taking a minute out. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And can we call Mario too and make this a three-way?
Yeah.
I'm definitely here.
Great.
Cool. Well, hey, guys, thank you for taking the time during this probably one of the most unique, extraordinary times in human history to talk about jazz and to talk about what's been going on and everything in between.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
You bet. So let's start off. Talk to me a little bit about new material and how people can get it, just kind of your thoughts on, new material getting put out there now.
Yeah, so we're releasing with Biophilia Records, which we're thrilled to be a part of. We love the mission of the label. If you don't know, they produce entirely environmentally friendly physical products, a very unique design, kind of inspired by origami, and it doesn't have a physical CD. It has a download code, and it's really an art object, which Mario, my co-leader here, has mainly designed. Unfortunately, those biofolios, as they're called, our production is a little stuck at the moment because the factory is shut down because of the virus. So they will come at some point, but right now there are pre-orders available for digital download through Bandcamp and through Apple Music, or rather iTunes. And the first track is streaming for free on Apple Music and Bandcamp, and it will be up on Spotify and Tidal shortly. So there's that first track out now, and May 15th is when the full album drops. Digital download for sure, the physical kind of TBD, but it'll be here someday.
Very cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about how you guys have come together as musicians to collaborate and kind of a little bit of your history.
Sure. You want to take that, Mario?
Yeah, we both we went to New England Conservatory together, but Phillip and I met at BAMFA, the program Vijay runs in August, and July, August. After that, we were separated for kind of a year. And I believe you were in London, yeah. And then there's this one day where we met up in New England Conservatory, and I just saw him again. And then we were in a lot of groups together at the school. But then after, we continued playing often writing each other pieces, and everyone else in the group also went to NEC, and we were in this group with Joe Morris's ensemble that started as a larger group, but then dwindled down to the 5 of us, and yeah, we kept playing music after and writing music for each other.
Yeah, and I would just add to that like I think as Mario and I spent a lot of time together in that last year. It was both of our last years at NEC. We were working on a really wide range of stuff together, both in the ensembles we were in and then out of that. And we just found we had a lot of shared interests, and even more than interests, like we were checking out the same music. We found we had a lot, like we often had the same reaction to stuff and the same opinions, even sort of opinions about things. So we just really kind of hear music the same way and have taken that to be the core of our collaboration, and I think it's a core part of everything we do together.
Talk to me a little bit about musical influences, maybe when you were growing up, things that influenced you and even shared influences or albums.
I think growing up, my background was like so many others. I was doing classical piano lessons, did jazz in high school and all that kind of stuff. It was, really kind of like listening to a lot of different stuff, grew up with the internet. In the last few years, what's really changed is I've, I don't want to generalize too much, but really taken a deep dive into the experimental Black tradition of the 60s and 70s and 80s. And, that would include Cecil Taylor, Anthony Braxton, Albert Ayler, Ornette Coleman, Roscoe Mitchell, and so on and so forth. And it's that music that is in the background of this record, and that has been at the forefront of a lot of our discussions. What do we think about that music? How can we extend? How can we riff on it? What does it mean to us today? What can we learn from it? How does it change? How does that music change how we feel about the other things we do? So that's kind of like our that whole period is kind of our foundation in a certain sense when we're working, even if we're pulling from many other threads, as all young creative, even older creative artists today do. Everybody's into many different things. That's not unique to really anybody. But that would be our foundation. What would you say, Mario?
To talk about something Philip said a little earlier, the critique we have, we often critique a lot of music, and we actually have this page of notes that we've been critiquing pieces, from like the early 1900s to now, and I think everything influences us in some way because we see something that we really, really enjoy and something that we find a little distasteful. So I think anything in that realm influences what our decisions are, because we don't want to make something that we personally find a little distasteful, as for my influences, I suppose I listened to a lot of jazz music, but a lot of rock music. I listened to absolutely everything when I was younger. My father was a musician, and it evolved over the years. But when I started really becoming very, very serious about playing music, I actually kind of ventured off from some of the other jazz musicians my age, and I listened to, Gratian Monk and Eric Dolphy and Anthony Braxton and people of that nature. Yeah, and recently I can't listen to anything but, Morton Feldman and Prince. So, so
kind of a running joke right now.
Yeah. So that's what it changes. We're influenced by everything. It's not one, it's never just one person or one person that has, changed us forever. It's a lot of things,
I would add that another sort of important pillar among many small pillars, but another important, maybe a little bit more significant pillar is the 1920s and 30s.
Yeah,
particularly 20s. What some people call trad jazz, but we prefer early jazz as the term. There's a lot of things about it, but we've studied that music pretty closely. It started under Anthony Coleman's ensemble at NEC, and we kept going with it, and try to study that pretty closely from a stylistic point of view, and picking it apart. What are the elements? And there's a great amount of complexity and counterpoint and things that are shared with the main pillar I talked about a little bit ago, Braxton and everybody else. There's a lot shared from a certain perspective in that music, and so we take that as a big inspiration too. I would just add that.
Right on. So talk to me a little bit about what you enjoy playing jazz with each other. What's the most joyous part of that?
I think predominantly it's the way we listen to each other. We're highly attuned to each other, and we don't only play, quote unquote jazz, we like to extend to playing everything and not excluding any kind of music from any music that we play, We try to include everything, and that's part of the listening, our listening, of course. And I think that's a unique thing because not a lot of people are, I wouldn't say not a lot. Well, there aren't a lot. There aren't a lot of people that are willing to integrate everything that they hear into what they're doing, And I think that that's a special characteristic. I also think that the humor that we both have sometimes is a characteristic. Like we realized that we could set up a really large rig of percussion with pianos. We did a gig together with 2 pianos and just a bunch of percussion, and little blocks and squeezable, I don't know what to call them, things like that. And it's supposed to be a fun time. We listened to this piece recently by Henry Brandt that it just sounds so much like what we're doing in some ways, but there's a humor to the music and an energy that we both share, I think, and the common interest, as Phillip Golub said earlier.
Right on. I would just add that there's this thing, we've been playing together a lot, and I think this is a thing with musicians who have long-standing collaborations. We can kind of know what we're going to do. And there's a certain awareness of, we could do this, we got this, we know how to do that. And a lot of the fun comes in the spontaneous decision, which is kind of, we're both somewhat in control of it, whether to do that or not. We know we could go here. We know we could go over to area X because we got that, and we're kind of headed there. Now, are we going to go there, or is somebody going to put some stuff on the train tracks and derail it? And that's often the fun. It's we're always in that question. And for me in the moment, that's what I find really exciting. And also, it's kind of the flip side of this, or the same thing in a way. How radical a choice can we make that still makes sense in music? If we're doing something over here in this space, can we put an element that's of the completely not belonging nature and make it make sense? That's kind of a game we often play. And discovering what happens when you insert a completely different thing into one context and try to make it work with all the experience you have playing together. That's very exciting too.
Mm-hmm. The restrictions are going to get lifted. We're going to get back to life, and you're going to get back to live music. Talk to me a little bit about what you hope both the musician and the audience realizes about this time when they come back.
I've been thinking about this a little bit, and first of all, I believe a lot of people, especially in the United States, have the time that they've never had in their lives. A lot of older musicians that have been touring for 60 years are now doing absolutely nothing. Like, they're at home, and I think this will give a lot of people, especially in our generation and possibly a generation above us, to figure out what they actually care about in life. Instead of what media shows them to care about. I think that people realize that that they'll understand the chaos of a lot of how life works, and I think they'll go into themselves a little bit more and try to understand it. And I think that a lot of music that do that, I think some jazz music or experimental new music, whatever you want to call it, creative music, I think that does that, and I think people can be more attracted to that as they see themselves wanting to also explore in some way and be creative because they have that time now, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I would also say, I have a few different levels of answering this question. I have one very specific thing for musicians, which is that this time, like no other in history that I'm aware of, has clarified that musicians are all in this together. Every musician is out of a job right now in this country. It doesn't matter if you are a W-2 salaried union orchestral player at a high-paid orchestra, or you're doing cash gigs with a different employer every night of the week to barely pay your rent. You don't have work right now. Nobody has work right now. And so that is very clarifying to the precarity of the economic environment that musicians, work in. And I'm hoping that there's some real, something can really rise out of the ashes of that. And I want to just, if it's okay, make a quick plug for the Music Workers Alliance in New York, which is led by Mark Ribot and others, and I'm very involved with right now too. And we're trying to do a lot of work right now to help build a more organized network of independent musicians and labels out of this horrifying situation. So, there's a lot of other people doing work, but I hope that some real, labor organizing in our scene happens among musicians. For the general public, I guess actually somewhat similarly, I hope people start to realize how large the cracks in our social safety net and our economic system are. And I hope a few people are really radicalized by this moment. Yeah. With regards to music itself, though, I'm just anticipating the first couple shows I go to after this is all over, and really feeling quite emotional about it. Being with other people and hearing music that's being made in real time by physical human bodies in the same room as me. And recorded music can't do that. There is an X factor there that is indescribable, and that's why we do what we do. And I just hope that the people, the audiences for our music notice that too and cherish it and take that with them.
Right on. That was a great answer, and thank you for doing that plug, and I think that's been kind of the function of really reaching out to musicians to get an idea of what can be done to make sure that you guys get, some compensation and just to kind of think about what's going on right now. So thanks for reaching out. Thanks for being a part of Neon Jazz, and stay safe up there.
Thanks so much for having us, and stay safe yourself.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Boston, New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Philip and Mario for their time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.